Doesn't it sound like heaven to love your teen so well that they can't help themselves but love you back? Welcome to Pivot Parenting. I'm your host, Heather Frazier. And together, you and I are going to build more peace and joy so that your family looks forward to being together in the fun times and so that you are strong enough to overcome any obstacle that your family might face. This is where small weekly shifts that you implement create lasting change so that peace and happiness can truly abound in your home. Hello, my friend. Welcome to today's episode of Pivot Parenting. When you're thinking about your teen, let's be honest, how much worry and frustration do you experience? Do you have a strong desire for them to change or for you to have more control over what's happening so that they can have a better life? Do you feel yourself bouncing between anger and apathy, just trying to find somewhere soft to land that feels a little bit better? Do you care so much about them that you find yourself being tied into a pretzel just to please them? This is me. I'm very flexible. And then when you've given them everything they want, their satisfaction is short-lived. It's so dissatisfying. If this is at all relatable, my friend, you could be misunderstanding and misapplying love in your family. Welcome to my 12-episode series on love. We're going to put fear and frustration and heartbreak behind us, and I'm going to teach you how to embrace love so well that your relationship with your children, with your spouse, and with yourself can't help but improve. Now, today we're talking about something really important in the aspect of love, which is being wrong. And we are all wrong. And if you don't think you're wrong, you're just lying to yourself, because we are all wrong a good deal of the time. And it's actually a really positive thing. And if you haven't listened to the 3 foundational episodes, I invite you to do so, especially episode 311, which is on self-love, because it is intrinsically tied to what I am teaching you today, which is being wrong. And in order for us to stay in relationship with the idea that we have done something unloving, incorrect, messed up, we really have to love ourselves as imperfect. And so today's episode is very much linked to episode 311. Listen to them back and forth in tandem, because it is so hard to embrace where we have gotten things wrong or incorrect when that is tied to our value and our ability to love ourselves. It is so hard. It is so painful. But in all reality, we're worthy of love. Even as flawed and incorrect as we can be, we are still worthy of love, because love is not something that is earned. Our ability to be loved and to love is not tied to actions. Now, that might make it easier, because we are very hardwired to have reward systems and validation in our headspace and in our culture. So again, episode 311, listen to it again after you've listened to this episode if it's really hard for you to wrap your head around. But being wrong, when I stepped into the coaching sphere and was learning all of the psychology and all of the things, and it was so eye-opening and such a beautiful aha moment after moment after moment for me. For months and months, I just was having these awakenings in my brain and in my heart. And so I actually have a really tender, sweet, loving spot in my heart and mind for being wrong. It's actually one of my favorite things, because it means that I am learning. I am self-aware. I am developing into a better version of myself. And by better, I don't mean more worthy. but better as in more evolved, more capable, more intelligent, more wise. And that is the ultimate goal, is to become more wise. And to me, wisdom is not only understanding the theory and being intellectually aware, but knowing how to apply what it looks like in practice, recognizing it in the world around us, having the skill set to utilize and implement. To me, that is wisdom. So, this episode, in a way, is applying the wisdom of self-love, because none of us get it right. And our default method is, of course, to say, well, it's this person's fault. If they wouldn't have done that, then I would be fine. If my kid wouldn't have lied to me. And sure, it's not fun when kids lie to us, but when we're honest with ourselves and we see potential ways that we have fostered an environment where truth is not safe for our child, we can see where we got it wrong, and we can help remedy why they are lying to us, because we yell at them, because we respond poorly when we find things out. Of course they're going to lie. Of course they're going to lie. And that doesn't justify their lying, but it's information as to maybe we should stop yelling. Maybe we should stop overreacting. Maybe we should listen. Maybe we should seek to understand that that's where we got it wrong. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I am so excited. I have the perfect story to kick this off. And it happened just yesterday. I was talking to my brother, and he's awesome and he's very talented. And we grew up poor. We had our needs met, but we were definitely poor. I remember times where my mom would ask to go through my piggy bank so that she could buy milk, and Christmases without really any gifts. And I was still happy. I had a wonderful childhood. My brother and I were great friends. We would go catch frogs and lizards and just spend all day outside making mischief. And one of the things that we had, being poor, were crappy cars. And sometimes we would get in the car and my mom would say, okay, let's pray because the car won't start, or let's pray that we have enough gas to get where we need to go. And it always worked. So it gave me a really valuable testimony of prayer, but it also made me really uneasy around cars and around their reliability, and just kind of like this inner fear or scarcity. Because when I called him, he was working on replacing his car's brake pads. So we were chatting while he was working on one of his cars. I was just sharing with him that it is something that makes me really uncomfortable when cars don't work. And he's like, well, you can just learn how to fix the things. It's not that hard. And then you won't have that fear. And my initial reaction was, no, that doesn't sound fun. That sounds really scary. And of course, I'm an intelligent person. I can figure out how to do what I need to do. In fact, just this past winter, I learned for the first time how to change a flat tire. And my son helped me, and we got that squared away, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. But I just have this internal angst around all things car trouble. And part of that for me stems from having cars that weren't reliable as a kid. And my brother told me very succinctly how to overcome that. And my initial reaction was, no, he's wrong. This is a terrible idea, and I should just have cars that run. And I do. Maybe 10 years ago, I had a car that wasn't working, and I'm very blessed that my husband provides well and we have a comfortable income. And my car, I kept having to take it into the shop, and I just was over it. And he's like, just get a new car. And I could. And so I did. And that is a huge blessing. I know that not everybody enjoys that, and I'm grateful that I do. And it also enables me to not have to deal with a pain point, which is scarcity and fear around car problems. I'm cutting the episode into 2 chunks, and the big chunk for this first portion is when we perceive that we might be wrong about something, like when my brother was saying we'll just learn how to jumpstart a car. And I roughly do know, and I know that at any given moment I can pretty much YouTube whatever I need to in the moment. But when he said that, I just had this visceral response, which is my nervous system, and it's totally normal. But I lost the big picture and was just instantly in this sort of triggered response of like, no, he's wrong. I just need to buy cars that run. He's wrong. I don't need to know that. And this is what happens when our kids or our spouses present to us how we are wrong. It is usually from some other trigger, from some other source that brings up shame or guilt or scarcity or fear, some kind of big emotional response. And we lose the big picture, and our body tells us that it is dangerous to be wrong. Now, if, for example, we were raised by perfectionistic parents who would nitpick and badger and judge us when we got things wrong, it can feel emotionally unsafe to be corrected. For our spouse to say, you didn't handle that very well. Or for a teenager to say, you're yelling at me and it makes me uncomfortable. Or whatever's happening, to be corrected can feel very upsetting because of how we were corrected as children. And so it's really important that once we can settle ourselves down, we can be honest about why we're feeling that way. And I'm very practiced in this. And so I could see it right as my brother had finished saying, well, all you have to do is just learn the things, and then you will have less to fear because you will be more educated. And I could see my visceral response, and I could see how he was totally right. And I was wrong. And we talked more about it. It is this sense of, I like to think of places that our brain gets stuck as a 2-part problem that requires a 2-part solution. So unhealed wounds and pride or ego. And I've done podcasts on this as well. But this is how we get over an initial knee-jerk response of being wrong or failing in some way or coming up short or missing the mark somehow. Because there's a lot of ways we can be wrong. We can be blatantly wrong. We can be halfway incorrect or insufficient. We can be uneducated or miseducated, and so we get things wrong. But this sense of knee-jerk response, we really have to humble ourselves and look at our wounds and decide what of this is coming up from my past and what of this is me just simply not wanting to be wrong because it doesn't feel good to acknowledge that I'm not right. Applying humility, and this is most aptly done with self-love, because all of us get it wrong all the time, or incomplete, or off the mark. And we can do this in our religious opinions. We can do this in our political opinions. We can do this in our parenting opinions. We can do this in so many various ways. But when we cannot acknowledge, because we are stuck in this wounded, prideful state, we are literally stuck. A really great example of this is when the scriptures talk about being damned. To be damned is to be stopped, to be obstructed. And we do this to ourselves by needing to be right. by needing to be right that our kids shouldn't have lied, by needing to be right that our spouse shouldn't have done that, by needing to be right that our kids should tell us everything so we can help them so they never struggle, by needing to be right so that we can feel better rather than so that we can learn as a family. Being wrong and seeing where you're wrong is the fast track to improvement, to growth, to expansion, and to connection. The best way to foster trust and connection is to acknowledge where you are not trustworthy, where you are willfully disconnecting. We might get mad at our kids for not talking to us, but how often are we on our phones when they're around? How often do we shut down their conversation because we're tired or because it's uncomfortable for us? To acknowledge where we can improve, where their perspective is valid, is the fast track to connect with them. And it is painful, but anything worth having comes with a cost. And for connection, it means being seen, being known, including to yourself. When we look at the big picture of a life in a longitudinal span, there are so many times when we get it wrong and we actually want to get it wrong. Did you know our brains will hold on to things? For example, let's imagine everybody adores the school principal, but you're seeing red flags. But no, everybody loves him and everybody thinks he's great. But there's confirmed struggles of him commenting on young girls' social media inappropriately or making contact with people, with students outside of school that's unnecessary and kind of weird. Or there is evidence that maybe he's been embezzling money from the school, but everybody seems to love him and you just don't get why. One of the reasons that could be possible is because people don't want to be wrong. And so they will hold on to antiquated and disproved belief systems because that feels better to them than to acknowledge that they were wrong. That a principle that they really liked is actually a creep. That is a really tough pill to swallow, especially if they have invested votes or money or time, or they have doubled down at family dinners to say, no, he's a really great principal, and here's why I like him. And multiple things are true about all of us. He might have done some really great principal things, and he might be doing some really inappropriate things that we disagree with as well. None of us are black and white. None of us are all or nothing. We're all multifaceted in various ways. And to acknowledge the truth of that doesn't make us weak, doesn't make us stupid. It makes us actually intelligent because we can use critical thinking. It's really important to use critical thinking and teach our kids how to use critical thinking, which means we have to acknowledge when we are wrong. In order to do this, our opinions about people and about situations should evolve and grow as we gain more information. And it doesn't make us uneducated or stupid. It actually makes us more respectable. Think about the people that you know that double down on really antiquated ways of thinking. Like during my grandparents' time, it was normal for teachers to hit students. It was normal for kids to get sent to bed hungry if they did something naughty. Now, you and I know that these aren't actually good practices, that this isn't good parenting. And we want to look at what we're doing now that in 20 years will be the same thing as teachers hitting students in school that are misbehaving. We need to acknowledge them now so that we can progress at a faster rate and our children can benefit from our progression. Imagine your teen walking into the room and your heart skips a beat because you're so excited to see them. Just connection, love, and peace flowing between you. You're confident that no matter their mood, it's going to be okay. This is the powerful skill set my clients gain. Book a free Discover Your Disconnection Pattern call with me, and I will outline your exact process to find the peace, connection, and confidence in your teen and their future you're wanting. Visit my website, heatherfraser.com, or click the link in the show notes. Remember, Fraser is spelled with a Z-I in the middle. I look forward to meeting and helping you. Another way to phrase being wrong that maybe feels a little more benign and more embracing is a growth mindset, because it's easier to see where we're getting it wrong when it's not a reflection of worth or value, because it's not. One of the most common painful things I see parents think is wrong is what their child's life should look like or what their own life should look like. My spouse shouldn't have caused our divorce. My teenager shouldn't be struggling. And I get that these are painful experiences that nobody would wish. But what if we're wrong? What if our child is supposed to struggle? What if our spouse is supposed to do whatever they want because they can? And yes, this causes us pain. But when we get stuck in thinking that things should not be or people should not be the way that they are, it is debilitating. Again, it is damning. It stops our progress because now we are the victim or the martyr to the circumstance or to the person. When we can say, I was wrong. My spouse should have cheated on me and left. I was wrong. My kid should be in rehab. I was wrong. This is exactly what my life was always meant to look like, and I just didn't realize it. Then we are taking our power back. And this is the second portion that I want to teach you in this podcast, that being wrong is the most empowering stance that you can take, even in painful circumstances that we wouldn't wish on an enemy. Shout out to my fabulous client today that I was talking to, and we were talking about her daughter, and of course she's not making good choices. And it ties into today's episode because parents can get so burnt out in trying to help our kids that just don't seem to want to help themselves. Do you know any teenagers like this? Like, we want their life to be good more than they want it to be good because they're not getting up on time, because they're not turning in their homework, because they're getting high instead of going to bed on time. We can lessen the pain and the amount of energy when we stop thinking that something has gone wrong. When we can let go of the belief that things aren't going according to plan, that we're wrong about that life is actually meant to experience the full gamut of emotions, both the positive and the negative, because the pendulum has to swing evenly in both sides. Like, imagine a swing set. What if the swing just stopped in the middle and only went forward, but never back? That's not how it works, and it's not how our emotional pendulum swings either. We have to know the sweet to know the bitter, which means we have to know the bitter, which means we and our children are going to struggle. And to think that that is a problem, to think that it means that we have messed up or that our child has messed up or that their future is doomed because of it. We're wrong about that, my friends. You and I, we are wrong when we think that something has gone wrong. And to acknowledge that it can hurt, and it is still okay, can be a very liberating experience. And I say this with so much love and compassion. I have so many people who I love so much struggling with divorce or with hurt from their children making choices that they don't like. And I do not say this lightly or flippantly, but maybe, just maybe, if you try on the idea, this is what I like to do with my clients. We try on the belief, we put it on our whole body and see how it actually feels. This is what I invite you to do. Take the belief of whatever painful situation you're in and the aspect that maybe you could be wrong about it. That your child is supposed to be doing whatever they're doing, or your partner, or your parents, or your siblings, or your neighbor, or your best friend. That what they're doing, even though it isn't what you would choose, you're wrong about them when you think that they shouldn't be doing it. They should. And this is how we grow. This is how we develop. This is how we learn empathy and compassion. And we can heal wounds and help others to heal their wounds, and how we grow. We were talking with our kids this morning at breakfast about a Bible story, and it's when Moses is parting the Red Sea and Pharaoh is chasing the children of Israel, and they get to the other side and Pharaoh's armies are drowned. And the first thing that they do is they start complaining, and they start saying, "You should have left us in Egypt. This really stinks." And the takeaway that I wanted to point out to my kids, and that I want to point out to you, is that first off, humans haven't evolved all that much since biblical times. We are complainers, and we think that if we're doing what is right, or what we think is right, that life should be easy and should be good. We're wrong about that. Life is hard for everyone, and sometimes it can look really unfair when we look at people who maybe we don't think are making wise choices, and it might appear like they have things easier, and they might actually have things easier. There's a lot of pain when one spouse is cheated on and mistreated, and they are left in ashes, and the lying, cheating spouse looks like they are just having the time of their life and they're okay. It can feel like a massive betrayal. And that's okay. It is okay in the sense that everybody gets agency, and we do not always initially reap what we sow. Long term, yes. Short term, not always. And just like Bible stories or modern day events, if life were a vending machine and we put in our 50 cents and got our candy bar immediately, or in other words, we put in the right choice and got the prize immediately, it would negate agency because it would be stupid to choose anything different. If life were always easy, if we followed the 10 Commandments or whatever guidelines you ascribe to, and you immediately got the blessing and the prize, well, it would be no brainer just to do exactly, we would just be trained dogs, not thinking for ourselves. It is imperative for agency to truly exist that it is not a vending machine, that there is not immediate gratification, that there is not 1 + 1 = 2 every time in the short term, because that's not really agency. That's not really choice. But for whatever reason, culturally, a lot of times we think this, and I've seen this play out specifically in religious settings. Well, that kid isn't embracing the faith because the parents didn't do a good enough job. No, actually, the child just has agency. It flattens and simplifies things in unproductive ways. And so to be wrong is acknowledging agency of everyone involved, of us, of our spouse, of our children. To be wrong is to look at life in a more integrated, realistic, honest, multifaceted, multidimensional, accurate way. Life is not black and white. Life is not 1 + 1 and you get 2 every single time. And so I invite you to try on the idea of being wrong in whatever situation is causing you pain. And if you need help doing this, I am 1 click away. The show notes have the button to book a call with me. It's free. We can talk about how being wrong could potentially give you the freedom that you actually seek. It doesn't come from other people doing what you want. I promise. Give this a try, and we'll talk to you next week.
Heather is the one, an expert in the field. She knows her parenting stuff, including how confusing it can be. You've tried it all, and it's a lost cause. Crying in the closet 'cause you failed at being a mom. But think again, there's peace around the corner, and there's hope in your hands. Your kid just wants your love.